Aloha, aloha. Welcome to part 3, Nrf2 activist. Unmasking the most powerful medical science ever. Now that we've laid a strong foundation and we're going to build on something really amazing here, I just want to give a quick disclaimer that the same disclaimer as in part 1 applies to all the other episodes as well. If you haven't seen that, we're not here to do anything that would normally require a license as far as, this is not for diagnosis or prescription, anything that would normally require a license. We can't guarantee that this will cure your cancer, your heart failure, your coronavirus, your Alzheimer's, anything else that we're going to be talking about as far as the science in those areas for educational purposes only. With that behind us, now that we've laid a very strong foundation, the rest of this presentation is where we finally get to focus on the even bigger picture with even greater clarity, ease, and glory. Our body is quite complex and simple. Quite complex and quite simple, all at the same time. Nrf2 is simply the master key gene regulator we're all born producing that regulates 100% of our extremely complex 3,000 plus disease mechanism genes, also called survival genes. That's right. This makes it over 1,000 times more powerful than what Dr. McCord had originally hoped for, which is a much bigger picture. It's quite simple to take one pill a day to solve such a complex problem at the same time, isn't it? It's much more simple than taking one drug at a time for all the different disease mechanism genes, which all have a long list of negative effects that each of those drugs are known for. We can just reactivate our own master key that tunes all of them. That's quite simple. So our body is quite complex and quite simple all at the same time. Let's enhance the resolution of this much bigger picture. These 3,000 plus genes are so complex, no biochemist in the world knows what they all are or what they all do, not even close, because it's been way too much information, especially when you consider how much we all have to understand and know what each gene product does to add to or take away the functionality of our cells, what all their mechanisms are in our cells for life and death. But the world's largest gene database, called Ingenuity, has accomplished just that for all the scientists and for all of us. And Ingenuity does have all of that information, all categorized and organized, with the help of all the genetic experts, biochemists, and medical research scientists who have ever contributed to all that from all around the world. So that's where we've drawn our information from, as we should, because Ingenuity is the authority on that, the #1 authority. This isn't just about Dr. McCord, who's recognized as the leader of this field. It's about the much bigger picture of what all of that medical science has finally led us to, which not even Dr. McCord himself would ever be able to unmask on his own. Ingenuity compiles all of the scientific data from all the other largest gene databases in the world all together into one database, including SwissProt and GenBank. Those are big ones, and there are several others. And this includes everything published in the National Library of Medicine, which is found at pubmed.gov. Ingenuity knows about. Everything published that includes everything published in every medical journal. They're all available there, and Ingenuity knows about. All of that data is now available through Ingenuity, which in itself has become the master key for us to understand the bigger picture. All the time and money that has been pouring through all of those medical schools globally, which have also been heavily funded by the drug companies, all of that has helped create Ingenuity, which in turn, ironically, has basically spilled the beans for us in a very, very big way. Ingenuity has, and has given us a much bigger picture of what Nrf2 activation really does. There's been a much bigger picture coming all along, and now it's here. I'm going to cue up the next screen share for you now, and it's just ironic that President Trump has been saying, you know, the solution for COVID will be here by the end of the year. It's bigger than ever. It's really big, and it'll be here by the end of the year. So again, I wonder who he's been listening to, and what does it really mean to get Nrf2 activated now? This is what is not in mainstream news media, hasn't been yet. This is what deserves to go viral, and this is what I'm asking you to help me out with. Please share this, help it go viral. And this is a bit ironic that a big, huge part of this has been made possible because of the pharmaceutical industry, which is a whopping $1.3 trillion global market yearly, right? Second. So, I'm just gonna keep right on moving, flowing right here. So, I'm gonna do something though. 1 second. Need to plug in my microphone to give you some better sound. I know that'll help. Okay, that's got to be better audio. And I know I need to keep this mic in. Make a couple of adjustments here. Okay. So, here we go. As we're looking at this, next slide here, here's another example of the data that is only available. It's only been available because of Ingenuity. What we're looking at is a handful of genes that are upregulated by Nrf2, that these are all things that we don't produce enough of the right things that are helping solve problems when we upregulate them. There's a gene, abbreviation with their description, and then this column here, you see genomics, PB123. What happens with that to these genes? This is the numeric fold change of how much they're upregulated. 23.6 is a lot bigger than 1.8. That's one of the ones that was changed the most. And 1.8 is where the first generation formula from 2003, the one that we talked about, was on the bottom here. And that's the same 2003 formula. You can see from all these what the differences are, even between genomics and PB125. Genomics, the PB123 is quite a change here. Now, if we look at the next slide, these are genes that overexpress and cause problems, too much of the wrong things. This helps bring back into balance. All of these help add functionality. It just depends on whether they're expressed at the right levels. And you look at the difference between genomics in lowering this time and suppressing to help tune them so they're not overproducing these things. Otherwise, it's like hitting the pedal to the metal, forcing the acceleration on a motor that's producing way too much of these proteins that are all causing problems, and it's a waste of energy. That part of the efficiency right there is a big part of that. So now what I want to show you is this next slide. This is from Ingenuity. Again, what we're showing you, it's a bit ironic, again, that so much as this has been made available by the pharmaceutical industry. What you're looking at now is every disease mechanism that is known, according to Ingenuity, this slide comes from, It lists them all from the ones that have the most amount of genes in them on the far left. And this bar here could be scrolled to the right to see even further. You could see for this window, they go smaller and smaller because more and more, it's the categories that have the least amount of genes. But altogether, they're all really important. It all represents every single disease mechanism that we know about. On the far left, that's cell division and cancer, which is cell division gone wrong. So those are the two top that have the most amount of genes in them out of every category. This just means that Nrf2 activation, these are, according to Ingenuity, 100% of these are all regulated by Nrf2, 100%. And there's over 3,000 of them. Let's just keep it like Dr. McCord. He's given it objectively when he says that, okay? And according to Dr. McCord, and it's really according to Ingenuity, okay? Because they're the authority on this. Dr. McCord would never have access to this information without them. But there's cell division, cancer, there's apoptosis, which is programmed cell death, what carves out our fingers in the womb. It's kind of important for those to be regulated right. I'm not sure where that falls on this chart. There's fibrosis, there's scar, which is scar tissue. That it's part of the healing process sometimes. But if it goes out of control, it can be a big problem. We don't heal properly. Then, so these genes need to be tuned right. All the genes associated with every type of anti-inflammatory protein, inflammation is a big category. Everything that you can imagine is all the disease mechanisms are all regulated by Nrf2. So this next slide is when we zoom in to sorting them, where Nrf2 adjusts them when they are regulated by Nrf2 from the least amount of expression to the highest. If we were to zoom into a midsection of that and look at what happens before and after, the red bars is where they are when they're not being regulated properly. The green bars is where they go to when we tune them, when we activate Nrf2. This is the level of their gene expression. And so again, producing too much of the wrong thing, not enough of the right thing, it's going to upregulate and downregulate whatever you need to get into balance is where it's where they're supposed to be. Nrf2 is always taking them in the right direction where they're supposed to be. So this is pretty dramatic slide. This one here, TGFB1, happens to be one that a lot of science has been published on that's more known. And this abbreviation for TGF beta, when it overexpresses 3 to 4 times as much of the protein, like you can see here, of what it's supposed to, it actually causes collagen deposition, which can create the failure of any organ that happens in. And that's just another one of over 3,000 examples that Ingenuity is giving us what they have in their database to show the world. This one is really telling. Over the past few years, it's been a big trend. A lot of companies have wanted to sell collagen products that are consumables, telling people that, you need more collagen. Well, it doesn't matter how much collagen we consume if our genes are literally tuned to destroy it. And again, this can cause the failure of any organ that happens in. That's just one of over 3,000 examples we're going to give you here, or the Ingenuity has in its database currently. So this one is 19 genes strongly associated with atherosclerosis are regulated by Nrf2 activation. And these results were performed in a Petri dish, although we are not a Petri dish, and not all the studies, the first one was human in vivo, meaning full human beings taking a pill a day with a meal. Each study has its own take-home messages, but this is showing what Nrf2 is capable of, and that's the biggest take-home message is what is Nrf2 doing? That's what we want to show you here. So these genes, what I want to show you about this 19 genes here, the 3 on the bottom that are separated by a dark line are not causing the problem. They're helping solve the problem. They're upregulated in the disease process, and some of the genes that are upregulated, they get targeted. They've sometimes been targeted the wrong way by Big Pharma, basically, because what we're going to show you is that all the ones above the line were actually causing the disease in the disease process, creating the disease, contributing to the disease, but not the ones on the bottom. Those 3 were solving it. And the bolded ones, that means that a drug's been designed to target those. And you see all these, that have an asterisk next to them, that means Nrf2 does what the drug does without any of the long list of negative effects of the drugs. And yet these two don't have an asterisk. And I can tell you that this one that was upregulated the most, this shows the disease process in this column. And this is what happens with Nrf2 activation right next to it. Look at all the red arrows that were turned down to green arrows. And the two here that were turned down, you've got two red arrows to the side over here. And at the bottom, all these that were upregulated to solve the problem, we increased those above what the body was able to do by itself without these genes being tuned properly. And we increased this one here by 7.61 fold. All these numbers on the right, it's a numeric fold change again. And you can tell this one has a drug designed to target it, and it was actually suppressing that gene. You're not supposed to suppress the gene unless you want to kill a lot of people. In this case, these were COX-2 inhibitors that after killing hundreds of thousands of people had to be taken off the market real quick. Not quick enough. And it just shows you that Nrf2 has never gotten it wrong, but Big Pharma has gotten it wrong. And Nrf2, this is one of the ways that we can show people it is important that we don't do too much or too little in every one of these cases. And according to World's Largest Gene Database, with all the data we have, Nrf2 is always taking it in the direction that it's supposed to be to help us achieve better functionality. So these are 28. This slide is 28 genes that are strongly associated with colon cancer. And it's very telling. It's very revealing. It's showing that only one of them has a drug designed to target it. And I wonder how many drug companies really want even that, especially that one. How do they feel about this kind of information being available now publicly, thanks to Ingenuity and thanks to people like Dr. McCord and myself who are willing to speak up about it? Well, that particular company, there's only one. It shows Nrf2 activation does what that one does without any of the negative effects of that one. But what about the other 27 genes? Well, Nrf2 tunes them perfectly too. Look at all the red arrows that were supposed to be turned down were made green. The green arrow down was turned up, plus the 3 at the bottom were turned up above and beyond what they were supposed to be tuned. And if you look at some of the ones that are out of expression the most, like the 6.77, just looking really quick, is the one I can see out the furthest, doesn't even have a drug designed to target that one. And it's the one that's really being, looks like it's being, having the biggest change with Nrf2 activation to solve the problem. So this is really important. Again, we can't guarantee that this will cure your colon cancer or your heart failure. Atherosclerosis on this slide here is the beginnings of heart failure. It's hardening of the arteries. So it's a big thing that's been studied. A lot of drugs on that one, about half of them seem like have one. This only has one. And again, drugs of the past, they only target 1-to-1 ratio, drug to gene ratio, where Nrf2 does a 1 to 3,000 plus. It does 100% of all the disease mechanism genes. So think about what that means for Big Pharma. And this next 2 slides is Alzheimer's disease, ALS. There's 66 strongly associated with Alzheimer's, according to Ingenuity. And this is the first set of genes here, 1 out of 33 on this slide. And you can notice all the bars were turned in the direction they're supposed to, and how many of them had a drug designed to target it. That's there. The second slide shows a huge section of genes that were doing their best to solve the problem, right? And it shows one here that is ATP1A1. ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate, ATPase. This is actually the NA-K, the Na plus K plus is scientific language. Na stands for natrium. The K plus stands for kalium. That is Latin for sodium and potassium. And this is standing for the sodium potassium pump that my father discovered, and my father was the first person to ever call it that. And it's, or to call it the electric generator of the cells. It's actually the engine of the cells that generates the power for cells to work. Well, this particular gene stands for the alpha-1 polypeptide, which is a protein that's literally required to turn on the sodium potassium pump. It's part of the process. It's vital. And there's a drug designed to suppress it, evidently, because what we're doing is we're increasing it above what the body can do when this gene isn't tuned properly, when it's just not regulated at all. The expression that it goes to is down. It's part of what shuts the life process off, literally, directly. And so there was a drug designed to help shut it off even more than what it even normally does, that I think is killing people right and left. Must have a tremendous negative impact in general, right? But Nrf2 didn't get it wrong. Again, Nrf2 got it right. Same thing with this drug down here, whatever it is. We don't, again, no biochemist knows what all these are, but Ingenuity does. It has them all properly categorized already. And these are just some of the examples. Let's talk about what's been a hot topic of today now, COVID-19. And this is all 36 cytokines being represented. If you have a weaker constitution because your genes aren't being tuned at all, aren't being regulated at all, and they go out of expression, what these do is they overexpress. And you can see by the top bar, without Nrf2 activation, there's zero suppression. They're all, this shows with Nrf2 being activated, all these others, they're all suppressed at these levels from 100% on the left to 0% to the far right. You can see the different levels that they're being tuned, downregulated when they are being regulated. Otherwise, what people die of COVID, 100% of them die of the fact that they have too much of a cytokine storm. They end up having a terminal inflammation, regardless of comorbidity. That's what people die of. And it's strongly connected to the cytokine storm. What we're showing you here, that is completely supported by a lot of different studies. And then let me just show you, again, another study I like to show according to who, again and again. And this time it is one of my favorites here. Back to PubMed. And where I got that slide from is this study here from pubmed.gov. If you scroll down on this study, there's the slide that I was just showing you before. All 36 cytokines that are strongly associated with COVID-19 are 100% regulated. This is what I've been saying ever since this fear pandemic broke out initially. I've been saying Nrf2 activates all of them because that's one thing that we'd already learned years ago. This data has been available for many years, and there's no excuse that it hasn't been on mainstream news media. No excuse whatsoever. This has been available for years prior to this fear pandemic with coronavirus, COVID-19. That's a fact. This knowledge has been available. This study just got published though in May, but the data with the what Nrf2 does with all of those has been available all along. We've known about it since at least 2011, 2014, at least. And more, as more and more attention was growing during that period, even on coronavirus in general, we know this. We know TMPRSS2 is required for all coronaviruses to be able to attach to the ACE2 receptor site and insert themselves in the cells so they can duplicate. And if that happens too much, that's a problem too. They kill every cell they do that with. But TMPRSS2, the strongest inhibitor of that is Nrf2 activation, the safest and strongest inhibitor of that. It's regulated by Nrf2. When it's not being regulated, it overexpresses and makes it too easy for viruses to just go and duplicate like viruses do. So we have a stronger constitution every single instance, everything we look at in every mechanism, every case. This is what gives us a stronger constitution genetically. It's what regulates those survival genes, also called is what they're called, the disease mechanism genes. They're known as the survival genes. So we use those terms, they're interchangeable. And so a lot of what you're seeing here, you see Dr. Joe McCord's name here, Brooks Hybertson, and over here there's Dr. Gao. He is the head of the Genomics Core Lab at University of Colorado. He's also partnered with Brooks and Joe McCord in the lab that they work in to help create the formulas, the second generation formulas they also deserve credit for. And it's not just Dr. McCord doing that. And they have a lot of support. There's a lot of supportive articles that also are connected to Nrf2 and COVID. There's a ton of different things that I can show you. One thing I want to show you is, well, I can type in shock or hypoalbuminemia, COVID-19. I wonder if this is going to come right up for me or not. Yeah, there's a lot of science on it over and over and over again. That's what we mean. Hypoalbuminemia, COVID-19. Check it out. There's also terminal inflammation. You can type that in. Well, let's just type in inflammation. Type in comorbidity, regardless of comorbidity. That's when they're dying of more than one thing, which most of them are. There are studies that talk about this, but they don't all have the keywords. Check this one out. Hypoalbuminemia predicts the outcome of COVID-19 independent of age and comorbidity. That's right. What did I tell you? And they're here suggesting that we dump more synthetic albumin in the blood as an infusion, which is only proven for decades to increase mortality rates. That means make people die faster. Yet when we activate our own lymphatic vessels, which is what my father and I have been champions with, that lymph vessels, we have more of those than blood vessels, more lymph than blood. It's their job to pull out the excess albumin, and they're the water magnet, so all the excess fluid with them, and dump it back in the blood. When we lose too much of them, it's called shock. Hypoalbuminemia is literally low albumin in the blood. It's another name for shock. It's another name for surgical shock, even when it happens during surgery. If someone loses enough, they lose enough blood pressure, then the blood vessels collapse, leaving them dead on the spot. And same thing's happening with COVID-19. This is what people actually die of. And it predicts, regardless of comorbidity, this is, now, what if we could regulate that also genetically? Well, we are with the Nrf2 activation perfectly. So there you have it. Obviously, Ingenuity has completely unmasked Big Pharma as small pharma. And how that works is, again, very simple, very clear. What they were big at is making money. They've had a huge financial influence. And meanwhile, each of their actual drugs of the past has still only targeted one gene at a time. Some of them have actually gotten it wrong. Nrf2 has never gotten it wrong. Nrf2 has always taken each of those 3,000 plus survival genes in the right direction of expression to produce the right amounts of each protein, each of which helps restore the homeostasis, efficiency, and functionality of your cells. It's no wonder why for every dollar we've spent to solve our healthcare problems, the worse the outcomes and the higher the death rates by disease. If each drug only targets one of over 3,000 disease mechanism genes, and the drugs also have their long list of negative effects, the way they work chemically, it's no wonder the sicker people get. The more money they're willing to pay for more help, and the more money the drug companies make, and the more money they make, the sicker people get. It's a big cycle. Around and around and around we go. For how long have we been hearing about this and not understanding it? Nrf2 activation technology is so aligned with the timing and trends of today. Healthcare costs have been doubling and tripling every 10 years since 1950, and the same healthcare costs have been the #1 cause of bankruptcy in the United States for decades. 75% of those have had full coverage medical insurance, and that hasn't cut it. How much of that do you think we can change with the solutions that actually do what they're supposed to do? Even several top medical minds are saying this is a revolutionary breakthrough game changer that will radically change how we solve our health problems across the board forever. And this will change the way we achieve high performance health and longevity forever. Just think about this. What we currently know is that each of the drugs in the past have only targeted one disease mechanism gene at a time out of 3,000 plus. And they're still actually making 1.3 trillion with a capital T every year, while your own master gene regulator called Nrf2 tunes 100% of all 3,000 plus without the long list of negative effects of all the drugs. That is some paradigm shifting perspective. How many of you have heard the basic business premise? Find a need and fill it. If they can make 1.3 trillion per year in global cells with a 1-to-1 drug to gene ratio, what can be accomplished with a 1 to 3,000 plus Nrf2 to gene ratio? This area of science has been taking the medical community by storm. For those who have not known, yes, the medical schools have been heavily funded by the pharmaceutical industry, and Big Pharma's financial influence is more evident today than ever before, especially their financial influence on politicians, government leaders, and even the legal systems worldwide. It's more evident today than ever before. It's usually the ones who've taken the most money from Big Pharma and big chemical companies who've sold out, who are promoting big government, who don't really have the interests of protecting the rights of the people. And they're just selling out to the highest bidder. And Big Pharma has been a big bidder. Much information of who's taken the most from them and what they've actually done for that is public. One documentary I recommend is called Poison in Paradise, which is very revealing. Even though it focuses more on what's been happening here in Hawaii with politics and government here, and the big chemical companies, especially within the Garden Island of Kauai, and what the governor has done within his role within the whole state of Hawaii. It focuses on big politics of Hawaii, but it's been happening around the world. It's been happening for a long time, and it's now more out of balance than ever. So it's more evident than ever. And balance is another law of nature. As you may have heard, nature seeks balance. With a massive imbalance within the pharmaceutical industry, it seems their whole mountain may just all come crashing down on top of them very soon, more or less. It's bound to happen sooner or later. Every law has its blessing, but we must still put the law into action for us to receive the fruit of that law within our own lives, the fruit of the tree of life of that part of our lives. And I'm very excited, and I hope you're as excited as I am to do what we can to help make the positive shift happen. However that balance is meant to be restored, it looks like we're in the perfect place at the perfect time. Each gene produces a unique protein, and they all do different things. Some of them are also called enzymes or peptides or cytokines, depending on what qualities and size they have. But each are unique proteins with unique purposes. And our survival genes produce proteins with vital purposes and survival purposes. Without being regulated by Nrf2, we end up producing too much of the wrong things, not enough of the right things, which causes the cells to malfunction. And in this case, it is literally related to decreased survival and is literally linked to every disease. It's not going to solve all the problems of you making positive choices in every area of your life either, but it is easier for us to make healthier choices in those areas when we plug the biggest hole at the bottom of our boat with what's doing it genetically. What's linked to all of that genetically. Reversing mechanisms, though, and this is why we can't guarantee that this will cure your cancer or prevent you from having a heart attack or anything like that. We can't guarantee to prevent anyone from getting COVID. We don't want to guarantee that. There's way too many areas of our lives that we can't guarantee you'll even do what I'm asking you to, right? Reversing mechanisms is what caused the cells to do things, though. If you can reverse the mechanisms that cause the cells to malfunction to begin with, can you restore the efficiency and functionality of our cells? Can you reverse the problems? Again, as true as all this is, can't guarantee whether or not you'll make healthy choices, whether you'll do what I'm showing you, whether you'll apply any principle. It's up to you. Taking even the best Nrf2 activator in the world can't protect someone who steps in front of a fast-moving truck. The point is, there are an infinite number of ways people can, metaphorically, be stepping in front of a fast-moving truck. So while I admit I can't guarantee to cure your cancer or prevent you from getting COVID-19, I definitely don't know any drug that can do that either. But I can ask a very important question. And remember my question. Can we at least be over 3,000 times more sure with Nrf2 activation than we can with the drugs? Again, ask the right questions and you'll get the right answers. Yes. And we can stay friends as we educate the beautiful, good people who have done the best they can to be educated. And we can teach them with plenty of love and empathy. Let's help them understand how important it is to join us. It's how a thing is done that makes it what it is, positive or negative. As we approach people correctly, watch and listen carefully to know when and how to approach them, those who are meant to join us will join us and help us with the much, much bigger picture. The bigger picture makes our target clear in what's been out of balance the most with our economy in the health field. And nature seeks balance. And this may be the domino that helps topple some of the bigger dominoes out there. The pharmaceutical market, which is still a much bigger money market to go after than oxidative stress. It's a 1.3 trillion market. It's ripe for radical reduction and transfer of wealth with a 1-to-1 drug to gene ratio. We can shift that health and wealth of many more lives with a much bigger picture of 1 to 3,000 plus Nrf2 to gene ratio, which is 100% of the 3,000 plus survival genes. What's the best way for you to really get Nrf2 activated and regulate 100% of your 3,000 plus survival genes? As you think about who you could possibly reach out to for third-party validation, and as you think about whether or not this will work for you, or whether you need to get your own before and after blood tests done, first consider what this has already been proven to do, and consider who do you have to reach out to that is more capable and competent, that has any greater authority to validate this for you, any greater than ABC, Harvard, VCU, American Heart Association, Free Radical Biology and Medicine, or Dr. Joe McCord, the world's last Elliott Cresson Gold Medal recipient, and finally, Ingenuity. What should you do next? Well, please contact the person who shared this with you to arrange a Zoom meeting, and you may even be able to catch a replay on that to help cover your personal business franchise and product options. If they aren't able to help you with that, then ask them to refer you to whoever shared it with them and so on, so you can move forward in the most harmonious way. This is a time-sensitive period, and as you may be the first person to actually be hearing about this in your city, state, and especially your country. And it is very new, even to the USA. And it's very new even to Japan, even to Mexico. And now, 220 other countries. Very new. Feel free to reach out to me if needed. And again, I'll ask you to reach out to whoever you shared this with, because we should at least recognize them and give them a 24-hour chance to act on this with you, because without them, you may not have even heard about it. I also recognize the time and effort it has taken you to listen and learn from this presentation, especially for those who have gotten through the full thing, every part. Congratulations for increasing the level of your intelligence. Some people say, just keep it simple, stupid, like the KISS method. I like to say, I like to give it to people in simplicity initially, but I also like to take them right out of their comfort zone to increase the level of their intelligence, which involves some growing pains sometimes. I like to do both. It's not a this or that for me. And congratulations for increasing the level of your intelligence on such a transformative science in such a transformative time. Together, we can transcend so many obstacles. We can transform the world with health and wealth towards the heaven on earth we've all dreamed of. And with that being a wrap, aloha.